January planning session. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. I've had apologies from Councillor Sue Osborne and Councillor Stephen Page.
Very much. Are members happy with the apologies? Thank you very much. Item 2 is minutes from the previous meeting. Are members happy for me to sign the minutes from the previous meeting? Thank you very much. Any declarations of interest on the second application? So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to ask for any declaration of second application in a moment. Because I have a declaration on that one and I'm going to leave the room, so I'd rather not hear the declarations either, so just to keep that really clean. So we'll do that just before we start that application. So any public question time? No. So I'm going to hand you over to Ollie, who is the vice chair, and I'm going to ask Tim to step in as the vice chair for Ollie, so that you can hear planning application, land off Longford Lane, Kingstone. And Ollie will take declarations of interest before we start the application.
We go now.
We get all of that.
Yeah.
We're going to get the people in from my end. They're not all in yet. I think this is for the first one. We're doing the second one. They're all in.
I'm going to not do it.
Sorry to delay people. We get them sorted. Sit down. We get away. So, my name is Councillor Patrick. Welcome to Planning Committee South. Yes, it's sorry. A few formalities for housekeeping. We're not expecting the fire. If the alarm does sound, please leave the building sensibly and calmly for the emergency exits. The meeting will be recorded and then uploaded to YouTube afterwards. Therefore, any members of the public present should be aware that they may be recorded even if they're not participating in the meeting. If this causes you any concern, please let me or Stephanie to my right here know. Please can switch off your phones silent for the duration of the meeting. The chair, that's me, will announce the agenda item number, and this item number now we're going to begin with item number 6. That's 21-02654/full and OS 6300 Rainfall Lane Kingston. The planning officer will first introduce this application, providing us with any relevant updates, along with a visual presentation to aid members' understanding, and then we'll start public speakers. Following that, there will be questions for the officers, members, and then we'll start the debate. So without any further ado, please can I ask the planning officer to start their presentation. Oh my gosh, my apologies. Declarations of interest. I was declare interest in that I was at the original committee that made this decision. I am approaching this meeting with my members. If you wish to indicate an interest, Councillor Kenton.
Thank you, Chair. I'm declaring interest at the original meeting. I believe that probably is relevant now, but I have only recently resigned from being a member of the Child Carnival Committee. That was about 6 weeks ago, so I'm declaring interest and I believe in win.
Thank you, Councillor Kenton. Anybody else? Councillor Whale.
Thank you. I'm declaring an interest, but not prejudicial. The fact I was at the last hearing as well. I declared a non-prejudicial interest on that occasion. The fact that back in 2007, I was a member of the Child Carnival Club, only perhaps because I was mayor at the time and you were told to go along to it. But I had no financial interest or any other interest in this application, and therefore I would stay and stay for the meeting.
Thank you very much, councillor Wales. Councillor Best.
Yeah, same as you, I was on the committee originally, so, when you did the.
Thank you very much, councillor Best. Councillor Kirby.
Yeah, if I say the same as well, I'm doing.
Okay, that's everybody. So without any further ado, let's have the officers' presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This application is for the erection of building to store and facilitate the construction of carnival floats. And the location is identified on this plan here. You can see situated between Ilminster and Steventon St Mary. Sorry, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'll try and speak up a bit. Sorry. So the application site is outlined in red here, with Longford Lane running along the western side of the site, and then going up to the north east, and then Park Lane carrying on to the north. The aerial photograph shows the two existing agricultural buildings which lie to the south of the site, and as you can see, it's forming part of this small field, although the remainder does form within the applicant's ownership. This is a panoramic view taken from the western boundary, very nice on today, as you can see. So you've got the northern boundary here, that's the hedgerow beside Longford Lane. That's one of the two building projects I showed you earlier of Winning Land. So these are some views from along Longford Lane. Firstly, this is with the boundary on the right hand side, and we're approaching the junction with Park Lane. And then looking here a bit closer, you can see in the winter time, you can see the adjoining building through the trees there. There's another panoramic view. This is on the northern edge of the site, so where Longford Lane sort of carries on round. I'm stood at the junction with Park Lane, which is the lower photograph that you can see there. So the building would be positioned between the existing building you can see here and the northern boundary, closer to the existing building. So this look back along Longford Lane from the northern corner. Two different times a year again, so you can see the existing building that I referred to before. And then we have another photograph. This is the entrance track to that building that I've mentioned a couple of times, looking towards the junction with Park Lane. And then facing the other way towards the south. And back the other way, looking north, just to give you a reason I've included all these photographs, because obviously there's a lot of concern about the suitability of the road, so I think it's a good idea to include a good selection. But then this is viewed towards the site from the south, sorry, from the north, looking towards the south. The top is from Park Lane, which you remember is the road carries on up to the north with a junction with Longford Lane. Then this was taken from the applicant's, from the parish council's landscape assessment. As you can see again, this building has a useful reference there, which is in front of it. And this is taken from a restricted byway, so putting those to expose the public view in the close vicinity of the building. Then this is the junction with Lulham Lane, where the traffic can come out and then enter into the Longford Lane. So that's looking to the east, and then the lower photograph is looking to the west. So this is the proposed site plan with the new junction going in pretty close to the junction with Park Lane. It's proposed to erect the building roughly 29 metres by 77 metres in 4 or 5 days, with an overall height of 7.3 metres. And as I mentioned about the remainder of the site being with applicant's ownership, is available for landscape planting. You can see a couple of images of this is the roof plan, as I mentioned, the by phase to the building. Then the proposed elevations with the shuttered entrances on each of the bays. So the key considerations in this case, as I mentioned, there was a High Court which quashed the previous approval. However, the proposal is not forward any particular use plant, and it's brought back to you today. Still the same application that was considered before. So although the High Court quashed the decision, it didn't invalidate the application to continue to consideration, which is why you've got a 2021 application before you. But the applicant has updated the ecology report and various other bits of information to ensure the meets with the latest requirements, and it's been assessed on the basis of the policies that now apply. The legal opinion that was obtained on the judgment confirmed that there's no need to consider alternative sites. There's no specific local plan policy, but the NPPF does recognise that sites to meet local business and community needs in rural areas may be found beyond existing settlements. There are, however, strong objections from the parish councils. There are a significant number of third-party objections, but there are no unresolved objections from the statutory consultees. I would just note that the local flood authority have asked for the applicant to update their drainage proposals to meet the latest requirements, but I don't think there's any insurmountable problems with that. The highway officer, Adam Garland, who meets today, has confirmed impacts on the highway issues is currently considered to be severe. Planning permission will be required for a different use, and the implications on highway safety would need to be acceptable for such a new use. To mitigate the impacts from lighting, the use of the building can be conditioned, as can potentially include substances. Although the proposed building is large and would be visible in the wider landscape, it would be seen in the context of existing large agricultural buildings and through planning conditions that will involve on-site mitigation. The development seeks to ensure the carnival clubs have long-term assembly capacity, so ensuring they remain operational, continue to help contribute to the wider economy and provide a social opportunity for people to convene and engage in activity for the wider good of the community. So the recommendation is for approval as set out, and as I mentioned, subject to funding conditions in the report for the reasons below, and confirmation that the LLFA's latest design standards will be met. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Let's move on to public speakers. And first up, we have Hugh Williams from the Campaign to Protect Rural in Somerset.
Hello, hopefully you can all hear me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Hugh Williams, the Chair of the Trustees for the Somerset branch of CPRE. That's the Campaign to Protect Rural England. This entirely rural and isolated site, far from any town, doesn't meet any of the local plan criteria for large-scale industrial use. Is it really the right that a few councillors sitting on the planning committee can just ride roughshod over the democratically approved local plan? We urge you to do the right thing and respect the views of the 3 rural parish councils which strongly oppose this planning application. Is it really likely that the future of Carnival depends on a huge building being imposed on a rural community? It's taken the applicant 3 years to bring the same planning application back to be redetermined lawfully as directed by the High Court. Of course not. Just to remind this committee, it is absolute nonsense for the officer's report to say there are no genuine alternative sites. Kingston Parish Council has a list of them, and Dillington told us in a meeting 3 years ago that alternative sites were possible. The council's pre-application advice was that SFDC did not favour this site due to its isolated location, because the council's own landscape consultant, Robert Archer, described the proposal as having a significant adverse impact on the landscape. Why are his views not even mentioned in the officer's report? Industrial buildings are supposed to be accessible by public transport. There is no public transport here. It's too far from Ilminster. It's completely unlike the Butler Carnival Park, which is 10 minutes from the centre of Glastonbury. The council's own transport consultant, Mike Velleman, said in April 2020 that the visibility displays at both ends of the very long, narrow, long forward lane are deficient, and that Southern Junction couldn't be mitigated due to the road alignment. Why hasn't Highway specifically commented on the deficient visibility displays? We have 3 suggestions we'd like to make. Firstly, refuse this application because it's an unsustainable location for an industrial building. Secondly, defer this so that a working group can be set up between the district council, town council, the affected parish councils and the Islington estate find a more appropriate site connected to the highway network, whether on an industrial site or a county farm. We'd be happy to serve on it. Making that kind of offer would go a long way toward calming down the ill feelings surrounding this application. And lastly, defer this application so Highways can specifically say why they disagree with your own transport consultant's detailed comments in 2020 about the deficient visible displays. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to our second speaker, we have David Gordon. The microphone is all yours.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, committee. I'm David Gordon. I've been a resident for just shy of 40 years in the hamlet of Arnsay, which is affected by this application. I was also the county councillor for Ilminster for 12 years. I also chaired the AMNB partnership and sat on the Exmoor National Park Planning Committee for 8 years, so I can see the difficulties that this presents. But I'd like to suggest that it's kind of making it sui generis is kind of allowing it to fall down the gap in the paving stones in terms of dealing with it in a fair way. First of all, I have some comments from Carmel Wilkinson. I'll be very brief, but she actually had coffee with your ex-planning officer last week in my cafe and discussed this. If this application is approved, similar to what CBRE said, it would have a devastating impact on the character of beautiful unspoiled country and dark skies. The style of development is out of character with the surroundings. Existing buildings for agricultural, carnival barns would be higher, 20 foot high, 20,000 square feet, and dark skies would be a thing of the past. The cumulative scale will be incongruous. The landscape officer should have commented on the application before it was brought to committee because these are grounds of community objections. EQ2 landscape policy document is missing. There should be a landscape impact assessment and review before it went to committee. And in addition, as you probably noticed if you've read the objections, objectors are generally very supportive of Carnival, but unified in their opposition to being on this site. Mentioned about sui generis, it also opens up the question of what happens if the carnival clubs for some reason move away. Will the building be removed from site? I think we all know that's not going to happen. Billington Estates have a ready-made light industrial estate in an area where you'd never give permission for it. And I've been fending off questions. Chairman, you know yourself, I defend on social media, I defend councillors' integrity on these things, and I'm not questioning it here, but people are asking about it, deals with the illness and so on. And not at all happy about the procedural side. And finally, it doesn't help that Arnsay and Kingstone parish meeting is wholly disenfranchised. We have two county councillors, Somerset councillors. One is the applicant, as it were, the former chair, Val Keach of the town council, and the other one, Sue Osborne, is sadly unwell, and anyway is now town councillor, so wouldn't be allowed to speak because she's technically an applicant, but I know she would speak vehemently from the public gallery against this. I don't think she'd mind my saying so.
David, I'm afraid your 3 minutes are.
Thank you so much. I'd just like to commend the CPRE suggestion on deferring for a look at alternative sites beyond the boundaries of Tillington. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much indeed. We had a third request from somebody called Pip Martin to speak, but we're not sure if she's in the room. In which case, if you want to make yourself known, you can have with 3 minutes, but I can't see their hands. We will go on to the next speaker, who is Barry Crab. Oh, my apologies.
Right, so there's no hands up online. No.
Barry, if you'd like to make your way to the public speaking guide, please. The 3 minutes starts when you're ready.
Good afternoon. My name is Barry Crowd. and I'm a member of the Harlequin Carnival Club and also represent the South Somerset Carnival Park Committee, agent for the application. I'm here to speak in favour of the planning application in front of you today. For the avoidance of doubt, it wants the Town Council as applicants remain resolute in their support for a purpose-built carnival facility. The Somerset Winter Carnivals have a long tradition and are unique to this part of the world, with benefits extending beyond social and economic factors. Carnival contributes to a wide audience that includes club members, supporters, spectators, local businesses, and many direct and indirect beneficiaries of the carnivals. Unquestionably, Carnival continues to change and evolve, and while some may say decline, the resilience shown by our local clubs through continued regulation and financial challenges stands them in good stead to continue and thrive long into the future. In a post-COVID world, Carnival is seen by many as a true community facilitator, breaking down social barriers and providing a base and interest for young and old alike to teach, learn, upskill and have fun. The reach of Carnival is also changing and has extended in recent times with the use of social media. One of the South Somerset clubs hoping to benefit from this proposal exceeded 20 million social media views during the 2025 Carnival season alone. This exposure increases revenue opportunities, which has been recognised by our local MPs, who are due to support and raise the profile and awareness of these winter carnivals in Parliament. The wider Unitary Authority is also supporting clubs, with the former districts of Sedgemoor and Mendon approving and supporting carnival build sites. This application has been through a rigorous review by Somerset Council, with legal opinions sought and extensive planning due diligence and scrutiny following a decision by the High Court to quash the previous decision to approve. In the section entitled Background of the Officer's Report in front of you today, it confirms that in Council's opinion, the previous decision, and thus the same would apply to this application today, does not conflict and complies with local and national planning policies. This is further supported by no objection being raised by any of the statutory stakeholders, including Highways, leading to recommendation from the case officer to approve. It is acknowledged, and it is with some regret, that the application has attracted objections. Considerable time and effort has been spent trying to find an alternative location for secure build sites, which to date has been in vain and unsuccessful. The proposed planning conditions are robust and directly linked to a carnival use, which should offer this committee, parish and surrounding sites and comfort. If consented, the South Somerset Carnival Park Committee, on behalf of the clubs, commits to ensure that the occupants will be good neighbours and hopefully contribute, not detract from the area. As set out, the location and technical merits of the proposal are unquestioned, and there is no sound planning reason to refuse its application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barry. Moving on to our next public speaker, which is Kim Toms. If you'd like to make your way to the microphone, please. You get 3 minutes when you are ready. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Kim Toms. I'm joint chairperson of the South Somerset Carnival Park Committee, and therefore I am speaking in favour of the proposal as applicant. Carnival is a long-standing and unique tradition in our local area, one that has stood the test of time in my hometown of Ilminster for over 100 years, and more widely within Somerset for many more. I am privileged to have personally been part of the local carnival community for the last 48 years. In that time, we have seen numerous challenges come and go, but none more pressing than the lack of places in which to build our carnival entries. Gone are pub car parks, gone is the yard at the back of a business premise, gone is the corner of a farmer's field. This proposal, originally enacted by the carnival clubs themselves over 10 years ago, was to give them a viable and secure future. This is still very much needed today. I have had my time within carnival. This proposal is not specifically for my benefit, but it's for the benefit of the hundreds of members and the thousands of spectators within our communities that you serve. It is also for the benefit of the wider community, including Somerset's hospitality and tourism industry. The recent trends on social media have seen unprecedented interest in our tradition. Even now, our Somerset carnivals are reported contribute an annual revenue of 14 million to the local economy. The clubs that we use this carnival park facility are a significant part in that story. This proposal is very much for the next generation. We are blessed to have a thriving youth movement within the carnival community. Traditional skills and opportunities are transferred from one generation to the next in terms of carpentry, electrical and fabrication. The arts in terms of design, decoration, costume and performance, all of which need the skills of finance and organisation, all skills which our young people desperately need to prepare them for the world of work and typically are available nowhere else. Should this proposal be granted today for the second time, we find ourselves in a very different world from when the project started in 2015. The road ahead will be difficult in terms of finance and build, as achieving permission is but one challenge to achieve. However, by achieving permission, we have a road ahead. To vote no is to send Carnival towards a dead end, one that there may be no turning around from. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much indeed, Kim. Moving on to Councillor Kathy Taylor, please. Of Somerset Parish Council. You can make your way to the microphone.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Kathy Taylor and I'm speaking on behalf of Sevington Parish Council. We recognise and respect the officer's recommendation for approval, and we also acknowledge the cultural importance of Carnival Float building in Somerset. Carnival is a valued tradition that brings people together and supports the community and the creativity of those that take part. However, members are not asked. However, members not been asked to decide whether the carnival is worthwhile. You're being asked to whether this development and this location is appropriate, safe and sustainable. On that test, the Parish Council remains firmly of the view that it is not. The most serious and unresolved issues remain highway safety. This proposal relies on rural road network that is already constrained and crucially is used as a rat run between surrounding villages and wider road networks. These lanes are not like traffic backwaters. They are regularly used by commuter traffic, agricultural vehicles, delivery vans, cyclists and horse riders. The reality fundamentally distinguishes this site from Glastonbury Carnival Park, to which it has been compared. The Glastonbury site is accessed via roads that are not used as informal cut-throughs in the same way and do not function as daily rat runs. The comparison is therefore misleading and should not be relied on. The primary access route here, particularly from the north, involves a steep downward single track lane with no passing places, poor alignment and substandard visibility, leading directly into a C-class road that already operates as a pinpoint. Local experience confirms frequent near misses and incidents that are not reflected in the official collision data. This development would introduce regular daily movement by cars, vans, tradespeople and volunteers, not just occasional abnormal roads. Adding the volume of traffic to single track lanes already functioning as rat runs would create a severe cumulative impact, materially increasing risk to all road users and clearly endangering the NPPF. Independent highways concerned regarding inadequate visibility, steep gradients and vertical alignment remain unresolved, and one junction still has not been properly assessed. That inconsistency should be given members real concern. Beyond highways, the site lies in open countryside, outside any settlement boundaries. This is not agricultural development, nor is it essential to rural location. What is proposed is industrial scale building, which would permanently urbanise a tranquil rural landscape through its scale, hard standing, lighting, noise and vehicle activity. There are also environmental and safety issues. Carnival Road construction involved flammable and hazard materials, yet the site has no main water, no main drainage and limited fire fighting capacity. Members must consider whether this is responsible and resilient to the local location for such use. Finally, while many representations support the carnival as a concept, many come from outside the area and will not experience the impact. The communities that will,
Give me your 3 minutes, or then for your remarks to a close.
okay. For those reasons, we urge the council to refuse this application. Thank you.
Many thanks. Finally, we have councillor Chris Baranowski from Kingston Grove Meeting. Please. You have 3 minutes. It's your.
Thank you. Yeah, members of the committee. My name is Chris Baranowski. I'm the chairman of Kingston Parish Meeting. This application is in our parish. We're a strong rural community who support the carnival and its work and understand its tradition of 100 years. But we strongly object to this application. We've had 2 parish meetings, the application, one in 2020 and one in December 2025. What came out of that meeting, both meetings, was the strong support for the carnival. But it's in the wrong place. Both meetings had no votes in favour of the application. I would ask the committee to consider these points of objection. The guiding planning principles that we live with is a national planning policy framework. While the NPPF allows some rural development, it is only where development is necessary, proportionate and sensitive to its surroundings. The proposed 20,000 square foot building, which is 250 foot long and divided into 5 separate units, is neither small scale nor incidental. The proposal represents a fundamental change of land use from agriculture to an industrial style compound and conflicts with the local plan. Secondly, the officer's report acknowledges landscape harm. It relies primarily on subjective judgment rather than a formal landscape and visual impact assessment. Given the scale of development and its visibility in an open rural landscape, the absence of a detailed landscape assessment at planning stage is unforgivable and not justified. Thirdly, the proposal relies on a rural road network with a single track, flood prone, without footpaths, and used by pedestrians, cyclists and horse-riders. The application proposes the use will be for carnival clubs across Somerset, from Chard, Wellington, Crewcombe, the Oval, Taunton. This will be contrary to all policies regarding sustainable level. Fourthly, while the report states there is no policy requirement to consider alternative sites, the acknowledged harm to countryside character requires robust justification. The dismissal of urban and brownfield options is based primarily on financial viability for the applicant rather than planning suitability, contrary to the principle of making effective use of land.
Give me, councillor Baranowski, your 3 minutes is up and then all your remarks to a
Last paragraph. If approved, this application risks undermining countryside protection policies by establishing the large-scale operational buildings may be justified in open countryside, primarily on claimed social benefits. This creates a precedent difficult to reconcile with the planning system. I would concur with the suggestion that the application be deferred so that we can set up a working party with the carnival, district council, the planning, the parish council, so we can move forward, save the carnival, which is very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, we were expecting Councillor Osborne to make a statement going to these meetings. I just wondered before we moved on, she submitted comments for us to make. Nothing about comments. In which case, we move on to part 4 of this item, really, which is if members have any questions or if officers wish to address any points raised by speakers. So, does anyone want to go first? Councillor Steve?
Jim, I'd like a clarification on situation with respect to permitted development plans. I'm concerned that that I just don't know enough about the sui generis class. I understand that there is no change of class of permitted development rights there, but I don't know what general rights might remain. However, I'm also a bit concerned about the Class Q development, and I'm wondering if we were to be considering our directive to remove the possibility of a Class Q from this development right. It wouldn't be Class Q because it's not agricultural, so it wouldn't be Class Q permitted development right. Class QA2 is a former building that was, but is no longer part of an established agricultural unit. But it's not to be built specifically for agricultural units to land, sure. It's not proposed as agriculture, so you can't apply that either, because it's not an agriculture. I would never have been in agriculture.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, you said last bit again?
Yeah, well, just to reiterate the point, the Class Q applies to agricultural buildings, and the building will be, it is permitted to construct a carnival building, so they will, under sui generis use, so will not have a permitted development right under Class Q.
Thank you. Listening to you, happy, Councillor. Thank you very much. It seems clear to me. Councillor Whale, have you got any questions?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It's concerning the under local plans and NPPF. I am somewhat trying to get my head around classification of this building. Does it have like an industrial building in normal planning terms has a classification? Will this have a classification under the local plan?
Not under the local plan, not under the local plan. There's, as set out in the report, there's no specific local plan policy for the use. The use is a sui generis use. But I think the report takes you through the policy position and why recommendation for approval is arrived at, taking into account all the benefits and the harm that will result from the development. At the end of the day, it's a balancing exercise, and the committee is needs to make its balanced judgment based on the information that's presented in the report and the recommendation put to you. But from an officer's point of view, we are satisfied that it is sufficiently compliant with the local plan, despite there not being a specific policy that it can be supported.
But can I clarify? It will be an industrial building. Full stop.
No, it's a sui generis specific for carnival use. It's not an industrial building. It may be in form, but as I said in the report and in the presentation, that if an alternative use is sought, then it would have to get planning permission, an entirely separate application.
Would you like to come in and answer that question?
So, Councillor, just to kind of take us back a step, because I think there's maybe a slight kind of linking this here going on. Sui generis does not describe a group of classes. It means that something sits outside the normal use class structure. So when we say kind of sui generis, then there is a brackets afterwards, and that could be anything from large scale HMOs, carnival construction, through to whatever you choose to put in there that doesn't count within the usual use classes. If I can actually kind of return briefly to your question around permitted development as well. It will not have access to permitted development rights that relate to general use commercial buildings or industrial buildings. There are, however, a group of development rights which apply essentially to all properties aside from listed buildings, but that is things like boundary treatments, issues along those sorts of lines. So it's unlikely to come back in relation to those, but then it would lack permitted development rights and say the addition of outbuildings or ancillary construction.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Steve, did you want to come back on that?
No, I think actually between the two answers, I've got enough. So I now understand that this is going, it's effectively its own specific for this application class because we've got a condition restricting the use to one particular use, haven't we? So, so as such.
So it's actually the development description that restricts it rather than a condition.
But there is a condition as well to which yeah.
Thank you very much. Councillor Well,
Can I come back? Yes, sorry, it's roughly on the same subject. In, I don't know what paragraph it is, page 143, I think, 143, yeah. Planning policy, the NPPF paragraphs 88, 89 are supportive of programs for rural economic development. Are we saying that this is therefore a rural economic development under the NPPF? That's what it says on here.
Yeah. Obviously, the nature of the use is a bespoke use. There is an economic element to it. It's predominantly a social facility.
But why the word rural? It's not a rural development, is
No,
it?
the site is rural.
Yeah, okay.
okay, if we don't have any further questions, let's see. Councillor Well, another property chair.
On the point brought up by two of the objectors on the visual amenities and should we have done a report?
I can come back on that, yes. It's not in a designated landscape. There is a landscape assessment that's provided with the application and by the parish, in fact, and that's been considered in making the recommendation. But there's no obligation to conduct a landscape visual impact assessment. It has been considered, and indeed with the benefit, as I said, of one produced by the therapies at the time of submission and objecting to the application.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Well. I think then we'll move on to the debate. Does anyone want to? Does anyone wish to start on this item? Councillor Steve.
Always going to fling myself off the cliff first. It seems to me that what we've got here is highly unusual, undoubtedly wrong, but I can't actually see anything particularly objectionable. I have concerns that it might lead to encroachment in the countryside. I received assurances that the way in which this has been managed is that the risk development route is not available to cause the harm that might otherwise have happened. I think in my view, the transport patterns involved from the site is mainly going to be people visiting the floats in groups in organised ways. I think it can spread over time, so I'm not particularly worried about sudden rushes of traffic. I also think the actual form, the built form, is it's not totally dissimilar to the adjacent building. If it happens as described, I think it will read as an agricultural building that you would expect to see in that part of the world, albeit specifically different because it is a 5-bay pitch. It will still be white roof in the distance. I'm not particularly concerned about the adjacent villages. The hedgerows are very thick between the village cores. There are plenty of places you can see this from. but will it actually cause a loss of residential amenity to the villagers? I'm not seeing that. So I think I'm broadly supportive of this. I think it's very, very unusual. Not particularly for or against its use, but I can't see any objections to the development.
Thank you very much, Councillor Steve. Councillor Kendall.
Thank you. I've got one concern here. Having visited carnivals, some of those floats are rather big. I just need someone to confirm that these little lanes are going to be adequate for these floats to leave and return and not cause any unnecessary damage.
Thank you, Councillor Kendall.
I'm sorry, not down. Who's our highway officer who's here today?
Thank you, Adam. Who's mine?
Good afternoon, members. Yeah, right from the word go on this one, we have said that because of the way the whole unit is going to work, then the traffic associated with it for the majority of the time is only going to be light vehicles and cars whilst the build process is going on. The applicant, I understand, has already said that at the time in sort of October, November, when the floats leave, they're happy to put in some form of traffic management plan to get the vehicles out. We know that they are potentially larger vehicles, but the lanes in the area, you've heard the speakers today, are already affected by very large agricultural vehicles, and through agricultural processes during the year, the level of those vehicles on those lanes can raise, lower when you're thinking about harvesting, ploughing, lambing season and the trailers and the lorries involved with that. So the larger vehicles in this area are already a matter of fact. And when you put that together with the fact that the applicant has said a traffic management process will be put in place for when the vehicles are leaving, we think those lanes are not going to be severely affected by this development.
Thank you very much. Does that answer the question? That's looking at least that's it.
It does answer my question, Chair, but how come some of these floats get stuck on turnings in towns and that? Because there's been no foreseeable traffic management plan. Does that make sense? And I understand with the agriculture, the farm agriculture going down there, but they're different type of vehicles, aren't they?
They are, and the problem is you have in the middle of towns, you have other aspects such as street furniture, traffic signal heads, lamp columns and that sort of thing. So I think the potential for causing problems in this area, especially when you put in a management, like you said, some of these things don't have such a traffic management proposal. When we put one of those in place, we can ensure that there won't be that sort of problem in this area.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kendall. Councillor Ware, do you have a question?
No, just a statement.
Please, state away.
Thank you. Firstly, to say this is an unusual application for us these days, because we can actually view it properly, looking at the various regulations and the recommendations, instead of having to worry about us 5-year housing supply. So very unusual. So, but on that, I will carry on that. As I say, I have done this one before, as other people here have, and my problem this time round is that the officer's recommendations are much more in favour, strongly in favour actually, than they were last time round. Particularly highways, we've just heard from highways. There was no objections from the official consultees. So that puts us into a difficult position if we were thinking of trying to object to this or vote against it. I have to say that it is a very large, even for a agricultural building. This is very large, and it will stand out. Mark my words, it will stand out in this location. But, as you say, we haven't had any official evidence that this will, in some way, be not acceptable. So I'm at the moment still debating which way to go on this, because I listened to the objectors, I've listened to them before, I've listened to the officers before, I've listened to them again. I'm still not convinced that this is in the right location. There is certainly, and it has another site visit or locations been looked for since the last time came in 2019, was it? And so there is questions to be answered, that's still in my mind. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Well. We've got Councillor Ashton and afterwards Councillor Power.
Yeah, I'm concerned that this really is an industrial building. It's, you know, if it walks like a duck, it's an industrial building. And it's for a specific purpose. Can we condition that the building is removed if that purpose is no longer needed? So, you know, that the funds are set aside to remove this building at the end of it. If it's there for one purpose and one for a specific purpose, surely, like solar farms, when their use comes to an end, they are required to be removed. That's all that's it. It's a substantial visual impact, and that's what really concerns me. These are huge buildings, and they're sort of getting through a gap. Sui generis argument is that it doesn't quite fit through with this. I think is a feeble excuse to avoid saying there is someone who's wanting to put industrial buildings. These buildings are used for industrial purposes. If you put them anywhere else, just because what you put inside them doesn't make the building any different. So I really have grave concerns about this application because of that.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. I know that Councillor Power was going to come in next, but I'm just wondering if we can explore that point before we do it. Okay. I hear what Councillor Ashton is saying. It's a complex matter, that one. I don't think development like this of this nation would be permitted in this location under most circumstances, including local policy. But the NPPF would allow exceptions of some kind. And that's, I think, where the balance is, isn't it? I think, Steve, do you want to take this a bit further?
I did. The next nearest building of any scale, not area, the building to the north of that wouldn't even fit into the field in which this is proposed. So to suggest that this is some new enormous out of scale flight seems odd, given that there's a roof which is the next nearest building, the next nearest property, if you like, just to the west of it, which wouldn't even fit into the field. That's the field, that's the roof. That's bigger than that. So I'm conscious that, you know, we're introducing arguments here without evidence.
Oh, so the point you're trying to make, I think, is that this is not out of keeping with the area. Other limits nearby.
The argument is exaggerated. Yes, it will be new and it will be a big building, but it is not out of the norm of the area.
Okay, point taken. Does anybody else want to contribute to this point? Because I think this is where the fine, you know, the balance lay. This argument is on this. So I also am concerned about the landscape. I also see the social benefits of this development through which could make it acceptable policy to us. This is where I think the argument lies. We might come back to it. Councillor Powell, would you like to take?
Yeah, I mean, I will touch on that slightly. I mean, when Councillor Ashton said about it being temporary, but then when you hear from the applicants themselves, it's 400 years, you know, when building more flows. But the point I wanted to actually make was, I think, Rebecca said about the light pollution. And I've got a lot of areas in my division, it's very rural, that, you know, there's no street lights, you know, the only lights they do get is when the farmers are ploughing the fields, we get very low lights of the barn lights within their farm. So I just want to know, obviously, they were building the floats inside the building, but the lights from the outside, how much will that be affecting, the night sky, etc. Because a lot of people, if they're living in a village, they do like to not have any light pollution, so they can see the sky and the stars, etc.
Thank you. Can I bring you in, Tim, to take us to the condition?
Yes, there is a condition, I haven't got it on front of me, there is a condition which control the lighting, including the time that's in operation.
Thank you very much, members. Dr. Hussain, Councillor Bunny.
Thank you, Chair. I think my concerns were really around the sui generis nature of this development, but also in terms of transport and what would happen if there was a change of use of sort down the road. I think from the debate, I think some of those concerns of mine have been largely answered. I think there is still a little bit of a question mark, but I'm a little bit happy with that. One of the things I just want to pick up on as well that I've heard said around is, and I'm really supportive and sympathetic to the fact that there may be a better site somewhere, but that really isn't within the gift of us as a committee. We have to sit and look at the site in isolation, just this application. So I think on balance, I will be supporting this application, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Bunny. Would anybody else like to contribute? Councillor Kendall, I can see your microphone still on, for certain's sake. Councillor Best, do you have anything on? Councillor Best.
Yes, thank you. I think going back on what Councillor Wales said, this time round, there is a lot more things that are supported and have been agreed rather than the last time when it was a little bit in the air. I fully understand the size of the buildings and all the rest of it goes with it. I think on balance, a lot of the issues now have been backed up by the officers. One thing, obviously, I would have thought that was the main concern is when the carts actually move around, but you've probably got the best people for moving these things around with what they do for all the carnivals. So on balance, I think my opinion from last time hasn't changed, and I would support this.
Okay, thank you very much. We've heard these two councillors willing to, two members willing to support this application. Does anyone want to propose at this stage? Absolutely.
I'm happy, let's straight.
A second. I think everyone, having had a chance to have their say, we ought to move to a vote in that case. So we have a proposer and a seconder to support of the officer's recommendation to approve. We have a show of hands, all those in favour, please.
Approve subject to conditions.
Fine.
Subject to conditions. We have a show of hands, all of those in opposition, all those against, please.
Two against.
And any abstentions? No abstention. That's carried. That's carried. Thank you very much. Members and speakers, thank you for your time. This afternoon. Patient. And we move on to the next item. I'm going to have a 5-minute break.
Just taking a break for 5 minutes. We'll be back shortly.
Thumbs up, that's good enough. Okay, so we move on to the next item, which is so the outline application with all matters reserved, except for the means of access for the erection of 235 in public open space landscaping. This is application 23/01537 outline. Can I just check, has anyone got any declarations of interest in this application before we move? Is there
This is coming back to you, so I think we've all heard it.
Microphone.
Chairman, this is coming back to committee. We effectively, we're hearing it again because it was unable to be completed in accordance with the delegation. So do we need to record that? Maybe it's obvious from the minutes.
Yeah, so we took some advice on another matter as well earlier. I'm going to hand over the call before we actually hear the application, just to give us that advice to clarify that point. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. So on that point, I think if, that's recorded in the minutes, obviously, that all those members that were at the previous committee have heard the application. And you obviously all have to be clear that you're coming with an open mind, even though we're looking at specific areas today. So another question was raised before the meeting by a councillor. It's regarding whether councillors on the committee could make this decision due to the possible financial gain from the land for the footpath, as if that was council land or would be council land, and whether dispensation was required due to the potential disclosure of pecuniary interest, of members making the decision. So dispensation is not required for this application, and the DPI rules attached to the potential financial benefit to an individual member and not the council as a whole. The committee must note that although the land on which any footpath would be constructed would be council land, any financial implications for the council as landowner are not material to the planning decision, and members must determine the application solely on the planning merits, taking account of the material planning considerations. The council's potential land receipt or ransom value is not a planning consideration. Land ownership and financial gain to a third party is not material either. So, well, I was just going to say if anybody's got any interest, but we just dealt with that before, so we don't need to go into that. So I hope that's clear for everybody that you can make the decision. There's no DPIs involved in the making of it today. Yeah, how do you think it's best to deal with the fact that everybody has been in the room, or not quite everybody possibly, but those members? Do you want them to raise their hands if they were here before and they are coming with a open mind to the application today? So if everybody in that situation can raise their hands, Steph can take, thank you.
Thank you.
That's everyone.
Oh, sorry, I do apologise.
Yeah, everyone except Oliver, Patrick and Jenny Clinton. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So thank you for clearing those two matters up. I'm happy that we can move into the application and we will start with hearing the planning officers.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, the presentation is fairly lengthy because it is a fresh consideration of the application. So I'll take you through in the usual way. I hope you can hear me this time. The usual way, the application site is outlined in red, and I've included on this plan Chard Town Centre as well, so you can see the relationship of the site to the town centre and the connections that we're talking about later on. As Abishay's Road here is run along the northern side of the site, and then off Oaklands Avenue down into the town centre, and then obviously the A30 Group Home Road going from east to west. The aerial photograph help with identifying the significant number of trees that are both within the site and the site boundaries, and the applicant has stated in their supporting information and development framework that the existing vegetation and trees are all forming an integral part of the scheme and be retained as much as possible. But whilst I put it up, I'll point out the area in the corner here. You can see the significant number of trees along the A30 at that point in the southwest corner of the site, which I'll come on to later with regard to the footpath consideration. This is the indicative development framework plan. It wouldn't form an approved plan of path permission, but it's important in that it demonstrates the development proposed could be accommodated within the site. And just some key features are that firstly, the access road. Access is not a reserve matter, so access is the one matter that's included with the outline application for permission. The significant area of open space with a locally equipped area for play on this, you can see the mouse on this sort of western part of the site, together with some significant new planting. And I'll just mention, whilst I've got the cursor there, the listed pillbox, which is actually in the sort of woodland between the proposed area of open space and the A30. The housing area is identified in the cream colour, and you've got the sort of spur roads coming off the central spine road in the usual way. The attenuation basin in the top and northern part of the site here identified in blue, and then an additional locally equipped area to play in the centre. And the new junction, I will provide a plan of the new junction because that is one of the plans that is up for approval as part of the application. So just moving through the photographs, this is looking along Oaklands Avenue, so the junction of Abershades Road with Oaklands Avenue. So that's looking down from Oaklands Avenue to the east, and there will be a pedestrian connection, which again, there's a plan I'll show you in a minute, whether there'll be a slight realignment of Abershades Road to bring in the pedestrian emergency and cycle access through onto the northern part. This is the further down Abershades Road junction with Tushin Lane, so looking east away from the site, and then in a more or less similar position looking back to the west with Paintmore House, which lies on the site boundary. So looking west on Abershades Road, Porto emphasise Abershades Road is at the end of the for pedestrian cyclists, not the vehicular access. Further down Abershades Road, right in the northern corner of the site, you remember I pointed out the attenuation pond, which would be in this area here. So that's the view from sort of southwest. And then a different position here on Crewkerne Road, looking to the west, from the southeast corner of the site, just in front of where the cursor is, and roughly where the car is where the new access junction would be created as part of the development. And then further west at the point, so this headroom will also be removed to create a new junction, but the trees would remain. This is the proposed plan, which is formed as part of the application up to the meeting right there. Just to talk you briefly through it, the blue dotted line is the area within which the junction work will take place. I think you can make out the red line, so there'll be a right turning lane into the new site access, which is 7.2 metres wide. And then in the sort of on the western side, you've got a 2 metre wide footway, and then identified in yellow is a footway and cycleway, a shared surface or shared access on the side of the road. And then this is the point at which the pedestrian cyclist emergency access joins Abershades Road. So you'll see there's a realignment here with a red outline indicating how it's going to be realigned, and then providing a footway separate pedestrian connection onto the footway on Oaklands Avenue, and then the connection for those wishing to walk or cycle to the town centre on Abershades Road, which is dotted in blue. So the key considerations are the principle of development. I'll just be very brief. The principle of development, we don't have a 5-year housing land supply. This will make a significant contribution towards that housing land supply. The presumption in favour of development under MPPF paragraph 11D applies and until the balance. Access and highway safety, I've outlined that is a part of what the approved plans are before you today for approval. Sorry, the plans for approval. Infrastructure considerations. The section 106.3 for this application is fairly well advanced in that a year has gone by since the committee considered it last, and all of the terms that are set out in the extra terms for the legal agreement are going to be secured, including education, health, GP service, public open space, etc. Walkway housing is going to be fully policy compliant, 35% with a 75 to 25% social split. Landscape impact is clearly an important consideration on development of this scale, and I've outlined the retention of a significant amount of existing planting and proposals for public open space. It's considered all is capable of accommodating the development on the site, which should have relatively have an acceptable impact on the setting of child, given the scale of development. Residential amenity is a reserve matter, really. The information is sufficient to demonstrate that a satisfactory scheme can be achieved without causing significant harm to residential amenity. There's significant separation between adjoining properties. Hedgerows and trees I've mentioned as an ecology of biodiversity are all going to be covered by conditions to ensure that they are retained and managed in perpetuity. And surface water and flower drainage. Flower drainage is connection to the main, and surface water is obviously the sustainable drainage system including the attenuation basin that I referred to. So that's the development. And I'm now going to move on to a short presentation with regard to the footpath. But before I do so, just to remind you that the application is an outline only, and consideration only includes the proposed accesses to the residential area which I've described to you, and the principle of up to 230 dwellings, taking into account all the considerations that I've outlined. All other matters are reserved. So the footpath link, nearly a year since the committee previously considered this application and resolved to approve it, subject to a Section 106 agreement and the recommended conditions. And crucially, an additional condition to deliver footpath to the west on the A30 into the site, and an amendment to condition 13, which has been addressed as a relatively minor amendment. So just to remind you, the development framework plan that I showed you previously, this is the route which would be envisaged or sought by the committee along the A30 to connect the site to the town centre. And then the option that's set out in the papers is for bringing through a connection further south onto Oaklands Avenue, roughly this point here, to connect it. So it's not on the A30, but it's will improve permeability from the site to the town and then into Abershade Road down into the town centre. So again, this plan I brought up again just to remind you the connections that we've got between the site and the town centre by the two main option routes, i.e. the A30 and Abershade Road. I've included this plan to indicate the land ownership and to show that the only means by which the site could be, a footpath could be provided on the A30 is on within highway land. And in the report, I referred to the technical feasibility study that's provided by the applicant. There are two. One which referred to the scheme which is recommended, which comes into Abershade Road, and then a second one which would require it works along the A30 and the establishment of a shuttle traffic light system. So moving on to the photographs, this is a view to the east from the position of proposed access New Junction. So looking opposite way to the one that I referred to a little while ago. And then that's the pillbox that I referred to, and the pedestrian connection proposed for along the A30, which I've just been pointing it out, it's been proposed, it's physically possible, but for reasons which Alan can elaborate on, it needs to be, it's not acceptable to the highway authority, but it is physically possible. It would involve the reduction of the carriageway to provide a footway on the A30 itself, which means you have to have a traffic lighting system in both ends. So that's this area here would have to be, we'd have to remove some of the vegetation in order to create that, to have an impact upon the trees. But you can see how little space there is along here to provide that. Then moving further up, you can just see here the pavement, which then provides a connection through to the town centre. So that's the Oaklands Avenue junction where the car is. So just here, that's the footway I was referring to. And then again, closer, that's the footway on into the town centre. So it's really only from the Oaklands Avenue junction that you've got that footpath connection on the A30. This is looking out to the north from the Crewkerne Road on Oaklands Avenue. And this is a survey plan of the stretch of the A30 that is affected by the proposal. So you can see how, again, looking back to the photographs, how limited space there is to provide a way. And this is the option which was prepared in response to the second meeting with the council to investigate the feasibility of providing the footway on the A30. And as I said, it would require the traffic light shuttle system along this section here. The connection would come in to west, further to the west beyond that toolbox. Remember, I pointed that out earlier on. This is the alternative proposal, which is supported by officers, which is coming in onto Oaklands Avenue on council-owned land. That is the connection. That's actually some trees here, which is why the path, the footpath, swings to the south like before, connecting into the existing footway alongside Oakland Avenue. And these are some photographs of that, so I'm standing roughly at the point where it was. I'm now going to Oaklands Avenue. And then that's looking back to the south in a similar position. So the key considerations with the footpath, firstly, highways have confirmed that the footpath along the A30 is not feasible because of the lack of sufficient available highway land, the slope of the verge and the extent of trees and vegetation. Although a new footpath could physically be provided within the highway land on the A30, this involves a traffic light controlled shuffle arrangement which would create increased risks within the highway. The applicant has proposed an alternative to form a new walking route to Oaklands Avenue, which highways have confirmed is a better option than forming a walking route along the A30. This alternative footpath link is detailed on the drawing I just showed you, addresses the planning committee's previous concerns. So the recommendation is that planning permission be granted subject to the completion of the section 106 agreement, the addition of the drawing that I've just referred to, that's the new footpath link coming in close to where the Shades Road on Oaklands Avenue, and the addition of a new condition which reads as set out there in terms of providing a network of cycleway footwork connections before the, in accordance with the scheme to be approved by local planning authority. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we will move on to public speakers, and we'll start with Stephen Bainbridge. Would you please take the hand? If you'd like to take the microphone there, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members. Thank you for allowing me to speak today on behalf of my clients, who are promoters of allocated land to the south of this site. They support this application and the proposed pedestrian connections suggested by this latest plan, but only if the footpath link with the A30 is secured. My clients have carried out considerable due diligence over many years and know that a footpath connection can be provided, and if it is not secured now, connectivity on foot will be severed thereafter to the south and east, to the detriment of their site, the wider allocation and beyond. The Harvey Authority may be convinced that the arrangements before you today are acceptable without the A30 link. However, the information given on walking distances and the need for the footpath to restrict the carriageway, as you've heard, are misleading. The journeys listed are not reflected for the majority of future residents. Furthermore, members need not labour under the illusion that the footpath connection must be delivered without third-party land, and that the carriageway must be narrowed, as is wrongly alleged. The planning practice guidance explains a ground clean condition allows third-party land to be subject to infrastructural requirements, i.e. the footpath. It should only not be used where there are no prospects at all of the action in question being performed within the time limit imposed by the condition. The registered third-party landowner has made it abundantly clear to this council and to our clients that their land is available for the delivery of the footpath. Using the available land, a compliant footpath connection has been designed without restricting the carriageway and with limited impacts to trees. We will be very happy to share this with you. Ultimately, under policy PMT 1 and 2 to be given significant weight irrespective of the 5-year supply issue, it is the duty of the applicant to demonstrate that it will not compromise the delivery of the wider allocation. Nevertheless, the arrangements before you only safeguard wider connectivity by private vehicle, not by foot. There are several options that could be considered today to safeguard the wider allocation and deliver a suitable, continuous public footpath constructed to an adoptable standard, including Grampian style condition outlines, less preferable, a condition to require delivery of the footpath only to the extent that it's on the applicant's land, or to update the safeguarding plan in section 106 to include the land that is necessary to deliver the footpath connection over the applicant's land in the future. At least then, if the council will not require the applicants to deliver the continuous public footpath connection, the other allocated sites can step in to do so in future. Members, we respectfully suggest that this application is deferred to allow for these lawful and feasible options to be considered further to ensure vital piece of the allocations jigsaw puzzle is not discarded today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next call, Darryl Summick. Get to the
Thank you. My main objection is the Eastern Relief Road route that likely goes directly through both this housing and other existing developments. One signpost shows as a route from North Chard to Yeovil and Axminster. This will pull significant traffic, including lorries and vans, through residential areas and right next to the Reservoir Nature Reserve. Whilst the idea of rerouting from Central Chard is commendable, this is not an appropriate route. Developments and land allocations have been approved over the last few years whilst blocking any meaningful debate or public input on this issue, or indeed allowing consultation on other potential routes from councillors and planners, simply pushing the route down the road and avoiding an emotive issue at each relevant development application, thus allowing no representation at any stage. The proposed road route, which should have been consulted on before any of these developments, has been glossed over to deny the public its right to challenge. As we near the current conclusion of development phases, it will be slipped in at the end, presumably with little room to input at such a late stage, with land already acquired along the way. The 1986 Chard Local Plan, some 40 years ago, included mention of a relief road at the eastern edge, but not through housing and not running through one side of the nature reserve, and therefore need to rethink. There has been no meaningful review or opportunity for the public to have their say in the last 40 years. The road will have a massive impact on the tranquility of Chard Nature Reserve, a most valuable space for wildlife and the public, including large numbers of birds and butterfly species, and installing a very busy road route will be to the detriment of residents. Current access to the reservoir will be adversely affected with the need to traverse what will be a very busy road. In 40 years, Chard and its traffic have grown significantly. No doubt recent road surveys into town would show traffic is far higher now than when this route was first suggested in 1986, and will reroute heavy vehicles through housing and next to the reserve. In recent years, councillors and planners have brushed past this issue, not wishing to engage with public concerns. Their feedback has suggested it may not happen or it may be located further out, but at no time have the council or planners formally confirmed the actual route, saying it is still to be decided, despite acquiring land and roads to accommodate what looks like a route through this and other developments, which will be unpopular with the public. It should not be too late. Be honest. Confirm the actual route being considered. Pause approval until a committee can be formed, which includes public representation to look at all possible routes, and then outline pros and cons. If a route is agreed or declined, include the reasoning behind it, so the public can understand the why and have their say. Don't let this opportunity to save the nature reserve pass by, and give the people of Chard a proper say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, can I call Councillor Craig Hussey, who's the representative from Chard Council.
Thank you, Chairman. As Chair of Chard Town Council Planning and Highways Committee, I'm here today to speak against this application. Our committee met on the 25th of July to discuss this matter, and we opposed it on various reasons, one of them being the uncertainty surrounding the often mentioned relief road, which this application seems to have catered for in the form of a ransom strip, and I'm sure I don't need to bring up the negative reaction that this is receiving. Other issues we raised were degradation of the environment, and also, as noted in the documents, the close proximity to the reservoir offers opportunity for generalist species to visit the area, and the potential for badger sets, as 6 were found on the adjacent site. Also, the application quotes 1 car per household. We felt it would be much higher than this. We see little on the potential flood risk and traffic congestion. I think this would also be a massive strain. We're already congested Victoria Avenue roundabout itself under pressure from the Convent Link. Many people per day commute on that road from pneumatics alone. Many large sites have been committed to in Chard, but not yet built. And this has been prioritised without looking at any brownfield sites. Which brings me back to my point of this application being directly linked to the Eastern Relief Road. With all of these points made, I must also mention the infrastructure in Chad, or rather the lack of, that simply cannot cope with this influx of houses, with the lack of services, and over recent years with the closing of 2 long-serving factories. Chad was left with 1 premium employer. For those reasons and all of those listed in the minutes of our meeting, I stand by the objections made by the planning committee and am opposed to this application.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next one for Eleanor Dunn, who's the agent from Gladman Development.
Good afternoon. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak about this application. Over the past year, we have been working closely with Somerset Planning and Highways officers and have explored in detail the possibility of providing the pedestrian connection along the A30 as requested by the committee. We fully examined the option of providing a footpath within existing highways land. However, as set out in detail in the officer's report, this was found not to be possible due to the carriageway width of the A30, which, if a footway was constructed, would require a one-way traffic system unsuitable for an A road which carries large volumes of traffic. Even if it were possible to use adjacent land, this would not be a safe or pleasant walking route due to the number and speed of vehicles travelling along the A30. And this is before the landscape and ecological impacts resulting from the extensive vegetation removal are considered, which would be significant. Therefore, Gladman have proposed an alternative solution, which involves the creation of a footpath connecting to Oaklands Avenue from the west of the site. To clarify, the existing scheme had no objection from Somerset Highways or Active Travel England, but we were keen to respond to the condition that had been proposed. The proposal presented today provides a safer walking route along low traffic roads. It is of a similar distance to the A30 route initially explored and has the additional benefit of increasing accessibility of the underutilised piece of green space. It is therefore a stronger proposal than that presented this time last year, and I respectfully invite members to grant approval in line with the officer's recommendation and suggested amendments to planning conditions to allow this allocated site to start delivering. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we move on to points of clarification on the officers wish to make any points of clarification on the items raised by the public speaking.
I can think just with regard to the Eastern Relief Road that is covered in the links and the it's not proposed to make that connection. The 106 agreement allows for it in the future. Adam may be able to explain a bit more on the position with the Eastern Relief Road, but it is also identified in the local plan. So it allows for it, but it's not. We're proposing some of the references were made to land, which is not within the site boundary.
And is there anything you'd like to add on the Eastern Relief Road this application?
Unfortunately, one can't, no, because when it was.
Sorry, hang on a second. Right, yes, come to one side, it's just for the people online, thank you.
No, it was being led by the LPA years ago, and it was in the local plan. And we had a number of conversations, oh gosh, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, asking what the position was with the Eastern Relief Road. And basically, we were told it was going to come forward like this in planning applications. So I can't remember the name of the chap who's sort of project managing it now. But it was with him, and we, in a way, we had nothing more to do with it then. So it sort of went a bit quiet. And we were asking about the sort of long-term delivery of it, and we never really got a conclusive response as to timeframes and how it was going to be delivered and that sort of thing. So sorry, now I have no more info. This is not actually granting permission for it, it's just allowing for it, should it be needed in the future.
Okay, thank you very much. Members and questions, so I can start with Mrs. Kirsty.
Thank you. With regard to the Eastern Relief Road, so both Martin and I have been around a long time.
Longer than that.
Yeah, but the Eastern Relief Road when I got involved with it was the last time we had it, which would have been maybe 10 years ago, maybe more. But it was to do with the district council, and we were told that the road was going to be delivered in chunks by housing developments, would each provide their little bit of the road. But unfortunately, as you go down this new road, you're going to join into an estate. So you're completely ignoring the fact that you've got Oaklands Avenue, which was built for the Relief Road. The Oakland Avenue originally had no houses on it. It was built as a wide road to take cars without taking them down through housing estates. But when you get down to the bottom of it, they put a nice little kink in the bottom and built some grass to stop you going any further. You can go, but it's not going to be an easy route. So if you're going to have the Eastern Relief Road go through this estate, you're going to join in nice wide road there. Oh, hang on a minute. When you get to the top, there's some small roads, small estate roads that you're now going into. And then a little bit further on, so this was even before my time, but Martin may have been there. So there's a housing estate called Heron Close, which is a little bit further down on Tooting Lane. And it was built, and I spent some time a couple of years ago trying to look into these development road, and they built it because they built it on the site where the road would go through. And the planning officer's report at that time said that they could build there because the Eastern Relief Road was never going to be built. So, and that's in black and white on what was South Somerset. So the Eastern Relief Road is a bit of a bogey in my opinion. I can't see it being built, and if it is going to be built, I don't think any of those people that live in those houses or in Heron Close actually are going to be very happy about it. So I don't understand, and I know this is not a planning thing, I don't understand why they're building a new entrance on the A30 to go into an estate where there is a perfectly good Oaklands Avenue, which is built really wide. You could join into there and you could have the pedestrian way coming into a safe place. So could you tell me why we have this road connecting up to something that isn't suitable for to take that traffic?
The reason it's got it in is because it's in the local plan, so it's an allocation, so the developments could be in accordance with the local plan.
Yeah, but not the right.
Just come back, and I do think that this is something that this planning committee and this council needs to take on, is that the Eastern Relief Road is just not fit for purpose. You cannot have people coming with planning applications and saying, this fits it. So could we at some point look at how we're going to deliver it?
And answer that bit of question when I come to Councillor Wales, so I might be putting my head in a bit of a noose here, but towards the end of the district council, who spent considerable money on the report for the Eastern Relief Road, it was done by a company called Three Dragons, and it was supposed to come to the very last area west. And it didn't come, and I was told it wasn't a great idea, it wasn't favourable to bring it at this time. And I've asked officers since if we could see a copy of that report, and no one seems to know where it is. So I think if you want answers to that road, I think it's probably in that report. But it would be a case of asking officers to unearth. That's all I can kind of answer on that. Councillor Wales.
Yeah, thank you. Well, back to the real world, because the Relief Road, well, anyway. Can I ask the officers their reply to the supposition by the one of the objectors that this hasn't been looked to on a large scale in relation to the pedestrianisation of this road, as it will have to link up with sites which are going to be east and south of this application site. So in terms, you have a footpath that runs from Tesco's roundabout at Chard, runs past Oaklands Avenue, then peters out, then you have no footpath, and if by the sound of it, you've then got to have footpath further along the same side of the road, which won't be linked. Is that, have I understood that to be the position from the agent who spoke recently?
Chair, I don't know if Tim or Crow was saying this, so this is, you're talking about the next application on.
I believe so, that this application has satisfied officers, including hiring officers, that it is making satisfactory provision for the development that is proposed in terms of pedestrian, cycle and vehicle access. The development to the south may well need that connection, but it's unreasonable to expect this developer to provide that when it's not required for this development.
Sorry, Chair, are we not supposed when we look at applications of large nature like this, to look at the whole of the area and any other applications which may affect this application? Am I right in that assumption?
Well, in an ideal world, it will be through local plan allocations. There is a clearly in terms of long-term planning, but we're looking at this site now under the policies that apply, including the fact we don't have a sufficient supply of housing, and the developers demonstrated that it can make those adequate connections. So the development to the south, they all have to do it when it comes along, and it may well be that they need to provide a footway.
So I come back. Am I right in saying this isn't actually allocated under the local plan? I don't think, from memory,
no,
is it a local plan allocated site?
No, it's not allocated.
I didn't think it was.
Can I just ask a question before we go on to anyone else? So we're saying that this footpath can be provided in a compliant way by the next developer on.
Yeah.
But it can't be provided by this development.
In terms of just requiring it for this development, as I have to repeat myself, it's not required for this development. When you come to consider the development to the south, they will need to make their own, demonstrate that they can make those satisfactory pedestrian cycle connections.
Sorry, Tim, that wasn't my question. Sorry to ask you again. So my question is, the next development site on can build the footpath that goes all the way along where members have requested it. It can be done. But the current applicant for this site is saying that it can't. So one of them must be correct and one of them must not be.
Well, it's to do with the physical land that's required to do it and land ownership. And that if you are to require the condition, you would be ransoming this site, and it wouldn't be justified because it's not required to make this development acceptable in transport terms. So the constraints, the provision of that footpath are, I've showed you the land ownership plan. Land is either has to be within the highway, and they've come up with a solution within the highway, which would follow a shuttle system. And then the land that's required, is Oakland's house, I think it is, would be required. And they have, I don't know the details, we're not obliged to ask them exactly what the details of how much they might be asking for. But even if they were to provide, to make the land available, there's a consideration of the adverse impact on the trees and the ecology on the A30. And to reiterate, it's not required for this development.
Thank you again, but that wasn't my question. My question is, applicant B, the next one up, is saying that footpath can be provided in a compliant way with the highway. Applicant A is saying it can't.
Well, applicant A being the one here, that is that they don't control the land, and neither does the land to the south.
I don't feel I'm going to get an answer to this one, so I'll move on to councillor C.
Well, I'm afraid it's not a very dissimilar angle. I mean, fundamentally, it seems as what's behind my question is it seems to me this is effectively out of sequence. We've got a strip of land which is in private ownership, which would be required to provide a southerly path connection that would service the sites and allow access along the A30. That is, I believe that it's my understanding that land is available on the market. It's just not being bought. and that there are significant landscape questions depending on how you deliver that access, because of course we wouldn't insist on losing trees, we could work around, but nobody's exploring that. So the gap between this development and the town, bridging that gap is not being addressed at the south. And further up, we have a large field, which is between the end of Avishays Road and the development, which might provide another pedestrian access, which is in third party ownership and therefore not part of what can be done here. So effectively what we've got is an island of development separated off from the town by third party land. So it's a sequencing issue that would normally be dealt with by master planning, but we haven't got that here because this is an out of plan application. However, my question is, are we satisfied that the developer has made reasonable efforts to secure, given the potential yield from a very substantial land area, potentially 40 dwellings per hectare? Because at the moment our planning policy says reasonable access for all by, including by pedestrians. That's our transport policy. We are encouraging pedestrian use. I think the speaker from Queensland Town summed it beautifully when he said this is for the private car, this development, because there's one path to service a very substantial area of housing. Have we got evidence that they have made an appropriate to that potential yield level of effort to acquire the necessary rights?
I don't know, this, we have to make a decision based on whether it works in planning terms, whether or not they've made that effort. The fact that it works in planning terms, and they are proposing now a second one, so there will be two pedestrian cycle access loops from the site onto Oaklands Avenue, not the one just on the Avishay Road, which I've described in the presentation.
Just before we go away from the pavement thing, right, if applicant B builds the pavement that applicant A can't because we can't do it, would applicant A be able to use it through their site? That's the first question.
I can answer this straight away. In the same way, it would be vice versa. Applicant B would benefit from the fact that they would have the pedestrian provided by applicant A.
Yeah, but that's
you can't stop. Once the footway, if it were to be provided, then there'd be no restriction on it.
But is the footway link there to be able to use the pavement through that site out onto the road? Or would that have to be built afterward to get access to said pavement that applicant B put in?
I don't think I understand the question, sorry.
Well, sorry, you've got to get onto the pavement from that site.
Yeah.
If there is no link, in other words, there's a hedge.
Yeah.
If the pavement was built, how would they link into that pavement if there's no provision for it in the future, even if they're not building it?
Well, they would have to include it in there. Suppose that it's deemed to be essential to make that development be acceptable. They would have to include the third land in there.
Applicant B would have to go into applicant A's site. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no.
I think you are. I don't want to lead you there.
Where the connection shown on one of the plans for this site, which comes in on its south-western corner and links in, so that in theory it could link in from there.
All I'm trying to say in this is, obviously we've heard from the agent from applicant B that they're going to have to build a pavement along there. So seeing this committee wanted that pavement there to make the site more acceptable in our last debate, then obviously if there is no provision at this time to link to said pavement if it ever comes, then obviously that link would be wasted. But that's not the actual question I was going to ask, but I just got led there. The very first picture that you put on the screen in your presentation was of a junction, and I'm sure you said there was going to be an access of it. Can you go back to that?
Yes.
It's the very first. Keep going. No, the pictures, the photographs.
I'm sorry, please.
Yeah, you said there was an access and you come back to it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Abishay's Road.
That's right. Is there's going to be an access off of that?
That's pedestrian emergency
Right.
access.
That goes on to a national speed limit. Is there a requirement, if there's going to be a pedestrian link there, to change the speed limits within that area? Because you're inviting a car to come off of a lower speed limit. We've had this before, where they can do 60 miles an hour, where you're going to put a access.
It's emergency access for cyclists and pedestrian lane.
But you're still using it as an access. So why are you keeping it as a 60 miles an hour?
Adam, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a sort of legislative requirement to alter the speed limit. The position of that emergency and bed cycle access onto that lane is in close proximity to that junction. So traffic going through there will either be heading towards that junction, so we'll be slowing down because we wouldn't expect them to be travelling at 60 miles an hour in close proximity to the junction, or they will have only just negotiated that junction, so will not be accelerated away from the junction at a huge rate of knots. The pedestrian cycling infrastructure can be tied into, you can see the end of the footway there on the right hand corner, can be tied into that. It can be constructed to standard because that's the developer's land up on that corner. So it can be secured via legal agreement, constructed in accordance with Section 278 Highways Act and provided as shown on the plans.
Okay, I'll just bring that up because in your report before you brought a great influence on putting a footpath next to the A30, which is a lower speed. Now, if you come to Crewkerne, we have got the other end of the A30, which has got a major pavement going to Wadham School, which is narrower, which does higher speeds. But it's just on that, if you were going to create any access, I thought you would have moved the speed limits out.
Hey, Patrick.
Yes. So I wasn't expected to be called. Mine's a straightforward question. I thought this site was allocated. I've heard today that it isn't. I think it is, but is it? I mean, I'm looking at the report from last time this came to committee. It says it's in the local plan, child strategic growth area, policy PMT1, allocated to.
Sorry, it is allocated. The land to the south is what I think.
Most of the sites allocated is a little bit of the south. That is not part of the allocation.
Yeah.
So it is allocated.
Yeah.
Yes, Rowan? Thank you.
Yes, just, I'll go back to the footpath, sorry. When you look at this, you've got to look at it sensibly. And you come up the whole of the Crewkerne Road from Child Roundabout has a footway on one side and no footway on the other. And that continues actually past the junction with Abishay's Road for about 50 metres, I suppose, and then peters out. It's been suggested by the advocate, I believe, that to put in some sort of one-way system, if you're going to put a footpath, you're going to have to put, it doesn't bear any resemblance to anything that we know to be a fact, because all you're doing is continuing what is the development child outwards along the easterly Crewkerne Road, which has been happening for generations. And in the front of all that development going up to Oaklands Avenue and past, there has been a footway put in for obvious reasons. So people can get from the developments along the Crewkerne Road to the town. Now, I hear and read now that the land is available for purchase with negotiation, I'm sure. And quite frankly, is there any reason why, if the land could be purchased, a footpath couldn't be put in, which would be suitable for the conditions of the road where we are?
I guess that's a question for Adam, maybe.
The problem we had was
it goes back to the fact that the developer does not control all the land on the northern side of the road. And at which point you cannot, in planning terms, sort of require a third-party landowner to give over land to help the adjacent site development. That's why they looked at putting the footway in the M30, and you can probably all read the incredible list of concerns that our safety guys have about that. So you're back to the point of saying, is it feasible in land ownership and control terms for this developer to provide a footway on that northern side of the A30? And because of the lack of control, the developer has said, no, they can't do it. Now, the other aspect of this is that the new footway through to the western boundary of the site is achievable through land owned by the council, as I understand it. The proposal has been put to Active Travel England. They have not objected to it. So there are two footway, cycleway links that do access this site. But unfortunately, we can't fit it on the M30.
Can I just ask Adam a follow-up question from that? So we're all saying it can't be done, but we've also heard that this piece of land is available. So if that piece of land was available, could a compliant footpath be put along that area?
Mr. Bainbridge explained the situation of being the third party owner is potentially willing to come forward and release a bit of land. Sitting here as the voice of the Highway Authority, I can't force that. So if an agreement could be made between the various landowners, the third party landowner, etc., and an appropriate amount of land could become available via that process. I mean, Mr. Bainbridge asked the question of whether it might be feasible to defer this application again, to investigate further. If after that process has been satisfied, the developer of this site comes forward with a new footway proposal that satisfies sort of current policy standards with safety aspects and etc., I am more than happy to have it assessed at that time.
Thank you. So just to clarify, if the applicant went away to look at that, then that's something that would be under the normal process you would review as normal.
Yeah.
But just that they have been asked to do that, they've made their position clear, so I think, you know.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Councillor Seaton.
Sorry, can I just come in there? I just wanted to bring councillors back to what we're looking at in the application. We've heard lots of things sort of that going outside of what the application's dealing with today. So just remember you're making the decision on the merits of the application before you.
But Councillor Seaton, I'll take a question from you. Is there any other questions? I'll come back to you and then we'll move into the debate. Thank you.
Chairman, it was really just a point of clarification. My understanding is that we have at least 2 acts allowing us compulsory permits to acquire land in order to enable development. And additionally, there are common uses in this authority of granting conditions to enable pedestrian access along the high roads. There's one yards away at Brimsmore at the moment, which is currently there. The 2 developers between are eventually producing a chain of pedestrian access and a public footpath. So just a point of clarification, is that the case? Am I misinformed in believing that there's the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act would apply here, and we have the old compulsory purchase powers, and also that we have in precedent of several Grampian highway conditions to deliver continuity on footways?
unable to answer that around the Compulsory Purchase Act. I am not a legal guru. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I can't answer off the top of my head in respect of the Compulsory Purchase Act. And there would have to be authority from somewhere to be going ahead to do that. I'm not sure where that stands as well in the council.
Okay, Councillor Kendall, and then we're moving to the debate.
Thank you, Chair. Just to go back, when you was mentioning about the cycle path going into this development. I just want a clarification is, you're saying the cycle path is only on one side of the road going in?
On the actual, so within the development framework plan, that I showed at the start of the presentation, on the junction. Just remember, it is an outline, so that the reserve matters will cover some of that info. That's the proposed junction. So it's showing at the junction, that's right, the shared use cycle footways on the western side highlighted in yellow.
So you're saying cycles go in and out of the development on the same side of the road?
They can still go on there's nothing to stop cycles going on the within the carriageway. But I don't know whether you can elaborate on that. I wasn't party to the discussions when the junction was drawn up. But just to reiterate, in terms of what's been permitted through this application, that is just the plan end there. The rest is showing as indicative. So that's the junction to line you're looking at. And the other plan that's up for approval is the Abershades Road. So it's those two plans, and all the rest is fluid.
Yes, I mean, the design of that should be within the terms of the classification of the road in question with regard to our guidance document for residential roads and new estate roads and things. I think the standard is for, if it's going to be used by heavy traffic, 6.5 metre wide carriageway with the 2 metre footway one side and 3.5 metre cycleway the other.
Okay, I'll move this into the debate, and I will start off with Councillor Ashton.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I am confused here. I may not be alone here. We deferred the previous application because we would like to see a direct footpath into, but it's basically Tesco's. So that's not relevant to this application, I understand.
So what actually happened was the application was approved subject to the footpath being put in place.
Absolutely.
And it was delegated to myself as chair, and I think potentially the board members, I can't remember the exact wording. And that, because that didn't come back, I found that the decision I was being asked to make wasn't in the gift, it was in my gift given from this committee.
Okay. So now we have another application with an indirect route, a rather circuitous, you know what I mean, route actually which probably people would not use so much because you go around the houses to get towards down to Tesco's. But we've been told that there is an opportunity to actually purchase some land here to actually put in the direct route. So therefore, the only option we have is to ask for another deferral, have that followed up. We're not refusing here, but obviously there's appeal, but non-determination, we've been bouncing down the road. But this was the reason why we asked for the deferral, not to have something that goes around the houses to get in there. It may be compliant with all the forms to say that it's okay and it's wide enough for investment, but it's not something that people will use. So therefore, a deferral seems to be the obvious choice here. Sorry.
Before we go any further down that route, I'd like to open the debate a little bit further, and if you feel later on in the debate that that's a proposal you wish to make, then that's actually fine, but I'm going to take a few more people first. Councillor Wales.
Thank you. Can I just make an observation first? Yeah, on you just mentioned it actually, Chairman. On our recommendation, as Councillor Ashton has just said, we actually have approved this application on, and then there was delegated to the head of planning in conversation with the area chair and the divisional member. Well, I'm the divisional member and Jenny is the divisional member. I have had no contact with anyone at any stage over this matter. And I noticed there was 2 meetings, one with yourself and one with Oliver, I believe. Yeah, and I wasn't invited to any of this. And I find we have probably not acted correctly to our recommendations at the last time we heard this. I've heard absolutely nothing, but I will leave that with you, Chairman, and also perhaps officers to note that ward members, we brought in particularly because we as ward members actually know the ground. We've held these positions for many years, and we also know that hopefully on both sides, we like to be fair and proper over it, and I don't think we have been treated properly on this, Chairman. And I would say that the views of the applicant are slanted away from doing what is the right thing to do here, which is to continue the footpath, which already is halfway, certain 50 metres, I think it is, past the junction towards this site. And we have heard that the land could be available, which is why we deferred it last time. And they haven't. Obviously, they've come up with a plan where you have a one-way system in the main road, which is an absolute nonsense, frankly. The put it on paper rather insults our intelligence, frankly. I'm getting annoyed with this one. And the fact is, the natural route, as I said, the natural route from Chard out east along the Crookham Road runs on a footway south, east, and it is a certain width. The traffic is the same there in the first bit as it would be in the new bit. There isn't any difference. It's the same road with the same traffic going on it. So there's no reason why you couldn't have a footway there. And so I'm afraid that unless we defer this for those proper and detailed negotiations with the landowner to put in this footway, I'm afraid we are in the same position we were before. And I as a ward member would not approve the whole application, and we shouldn't do that just on this point, which could be satisfied with a bit of careful negotiation and effort and expense, I say, probably on the developer's side, which may be the problem we're looking at. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Well, first of all, my apologies, as we've already spoken about the fact that neither yourself or Councillor were invited to the previous meeting, and I have on my list a very long list of things to do, and to have a meeting with Dawn to discuss why that didn't happen. But as soon as I've got an answer for that, I will make sure you're aware.
Okay, thank you.
I'll move next to Councillor Kenton.
Thank you, Chair. I wondered if you would go back to the picture of the road, the A30 with no footpath. So I've lived in Chard all my life. I've lived on the A30 and I've walked home from school. So, albeit many years ago. But if I was one of the children, and let's say 230 houses, 500 people live in that estate, you mean to tell me that when they come home from school, those teenagers are not going to walk on that road, they're going to go on some footpath that's going to take them all the way through another estate before they get to the footpath that they can then join to go into their own estate. I just don't believe it. I just think that if you drive from Chard to Crookham and you meet somebody walking on that road, which we do sometimes, and you've just come around the corner, there's a good chance you're going to knock them over. And putting no footpath there is going to put all those teenage children in danger.
Thank you. Yes, Patrick.
Yeah, I'm slightly more sympathetic, I think, to the applicant on this one, because we approved this. Well, I wasn't in the committee at the time, I think I was sick. We approved it, subject to 7.6, to get a footpath in. There were various meetings held which are detailed in the report. The applicant said, yeah, we'll try and do it. They came up with a scheme that they thought would work. We said no. You know, no, I'm quite sympathetic to that. We sent them away again. They came back with this plan, which is before us now for a second footpath to go in across council land, which I think is quite sensible. I am not from Chard, but I spent a lot of time in Chard, particularly going to the reservoir with the children. I know this road very well. I don't frankly see the issues with connectivity. Active Travel England, Active Travel haven't objected. As I say, I am slightly more sympathetic to the applicant. I don't think that we have solid reasons for refusal. In fact, I think we're at a stage, and I said this to the chair previously, where our behaviour might be considered slightly unreasonable. We've gone to and fro with the applicant trying to find a solution, and I think we've arrived at a solution here. Notwithstanding Councillor Kensington's comments, I would like to mull over a bit longer. That's my position. I'm minded at this stage to propose that we approve this.
Okay, before we go there, I did promise.
I'm not doing that yet.
I did promise I'd go back to Councillor Ashton after we've had further debate. Yes, Ken.
Thank you, Chair. I think coming to this before I heard the debate, I was very much of the opinion that off-road footpaths and cycle paths are always preferable. And actually, I was taking that attitude. But I have to say, quite often with these large developments, we sit here and we don't take the holistic view of the whole town into case. And I think with these larger estates, you do have to. I listened to the local members. I think they make really good points. And I think that we do need to listen to some of the local knowledge and experience that the members have. I would favour deferring this simply because I feel that there is a potential solution that gets this over the line and makes everybody happy. I think that if we don't defer this, I am going to probably follow in the footsteps of the local members because I feel that they have more experience than I do in the holistic view of this particular estate. I have to say I feel really conflicted. I hear exactly what Councillor Patrick is saying, and I'm sympathetic to that, but I think that we are really close to getting an optimum solution here. And I would just like us to have that last little chance at making this work correctly for the community it sits in. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Best.
Thanks, Chair. I can't get past this footpath thing. The thing is, I was quite prepared today, reading the report and that, to say, right, can't do it, that's it, we need to move on. But now we've had someone else come in with a further proposal, which would provide the path in the future. And I'm not predetermining anything in the future, doesn't come. But the thought of this estate not having the access to that path if it came, and a hedge being in the way and still having to walk round, I think when we have the option to keep, to try and include something in it, I think it is not good in the process that we're going through. Had it been that it was no go and that was it, I would have gone with that. But now we've had someone say that there is an option in the future that if a development was done further out, it would need a footpath which would go in that place. I'm afraid without that, I'm just, or out without provision to getting to it, I think we wouldn't be serving the people that live on that estate in the future.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Stephen. I'm going to go back to Tim, Planning Officer.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, a couple of points. We did not approve this without saying what we did was we said last time, this can only be approved if a footpath is provided. Yeah. We did not approve it without the footpath. And we would be being inconsistent, really, if we rolled just as it was. If it was then I think, we'd have to say, yeah, we're being unreasonable, we're asking somebody to do something impossible. But what we've heard is a lot of people suggesting routes to actually finding a solution to the problems here, including collaboration between developers, work that might involve the local authority. I think I've sent some work to the legal officer on compulsory purchase and planning. There are 5 different paragraphs in the National Planning Policy which are there to secure the importance of pedestrian access. And what we have here in broad terms is an outline application where the points of access for pedestrians are offline. One of them is in the top corner. It'll be very convenient for very few users that want to go in the northeast direction. But most people will want to go to the town centre. And you've got the option of walking down Avishays Road and cutting through the hospital and getting across the many roundabouts to get into Fore Street, which is itself a mile. So it's within reasonable. But the route out of this estate is dogleg after dogleg after dogleg because of the constraints which people have imposed on this by land ownership. Land ownership is something to be negotiated and something to be worked with, and that's what development's about. We release the parcels of land by doing land assembly as required. And here we've got the difficulty of there's a field in the way of one of the really obvious demand lines, and there's some trees in the way of one of the other demand lines. And we have a landowner who apparently is open to negotiation. I've been looking on our GIS. Our GIS looks at the edge of the footpath. Well, there's a very, very thin tip of highway land just touching the corner of this site. That doesn't seem to be an insurmountable problem to me. And I also think that the reason why we put sustainable pedestrian travel in particular so high on a list of things to do is it is the only option available to children for their own transport. They can go by bike or they can walk. They're not allowed cars. And we want them to develop normally. We want them to exercise. We want them to socialise. We want them to get to school on time. You have to have pedestrian links that are convenient. So over and above the 5 paragraphs in the NPPF, we also stuck some policies in our local plan to ensure safe and sustainable transport by all means. Safe and inclusive transport by all means. What we don't have here is an application before us which meets TA5, the second part, and it doesn't meet some of the NPPF things for pedestrian access. It is I actually thought the Green Taylor Hunt somebody done beautifully. I'm glad that's on record. It's a carnival. So I'm sorry, this is not yet something I'm sympathetic to.
Okay, thank you. Tim, I'm going to come back to you. Thank you for your patience. I thought most of the comments will probably be along the same lines. It's probably easier for you to take them all in on block then.
Yeah, I'd just say that with regards to the acquisition of third-party land, they have been asked, and I mean, deferring it, I don't think will make any difference. If you're going to make a decision, it's either refusal or approval with the condition, and because appeal against non-determination, you have to have a deemed reason for refusal. I don't know whether it's possible for the agent, for the applicant to get the option to speak, given what we've heard. But I've got multiple emails with the applicant and the agent and asking them to explore the acquisition of the land at Oakland's house, and that hasn't happened. So they've already been asked that.
The issue of the brain is just precisely in relation to negotiation. I think we have had
Apologies.
the negotiation of this. I'm simply sorry, just
It's unusual for
And remove that. I don't find it in opposition. But it's just device. So I think I'm question for you.
Shut the A30 up and down the new relief road.
Okay, members, we're just trying to get into a bit of figuring out who's going to speak to who and what we're going to do here. I really don't, I don't like deferring applications. We're here to make decisions, but I understand why we do deferrals. And last time we didn't defer this application, what we did was we approved it subject to that footpath being put along that road. I'm going to make Peter smile by just taking a 5-minute break because we need to go and get some fresh air, Peter. Just whilst we have a bit of a conversation, and it also gives the Alice time to speak to well, I want to show you the possibly go for take our seats. Welcome to Areas Town. You can maybe welcome to Areas Town.
Just joking on fire.
Right, okay, thank you ever so much. I'm just going to go over to Troy to do a bit of a sum up on where we are and maybe bring Tim in, and then I'm going to go to the ward members.
Thank you, Chair. Just to kind of bring us to sharp focus in relation to this, what's presented to members is a set of proposals in relation to the access that is compliant from a highways point of view. It may not be ideal in relation to it, but we are making a decision on the planning balance. What has been sought and analysed in terms of the Crew Cairn Road access, aside from any issues in relation to land ownership, has been looked at from a highways technical point of view. And Adam make noises at me if I'm going too far adrift, but has been found to be not be something that highways would support. So even if we were in a position to say that the ownership in relation to that land was not a problem, highways would still not be regarding that as being appropriate.
Can I just clarify something there? Because that's not what highways said earlier. Highways said if the land became available and an application with that land was put in, they would do a report on it, a feasibility study on it as it was. They never said it wasn't acceptable. I'm really sorry, I'm going to need you to use the microphone. I think the comment was, if that proposal came forward to highways would evaluate it. They never said it wasn't correct.
Yeah, the footway actually within the highway on the A30 is unacceptable. And I detailed the safety issues of all of that, not only safety, congestion and impact on whatever. If third-party land is used and comes forward for presentation as being suitable in planning terms as well, I would expect a suite of documents showing the line of it, construction drawings. I would expect a stage 1 road safety audit and designer's response and this sort of thing. But if that was presented to us and offered to be adopted as highway, then we'd look at it. That's
Good. Tim, just to bear in mind, there is a listed pillbox would have to be removed if you were going to have that continuous footway on the northern side of Crew Cairn Road.
I think I'm not going to go into that because I think we're now looking at plans of this has not been brought up before. This is something completely curveball coming again from the outside. Councillor Seed.
Chairman, the listed pillbox is below the public evidence space marked on the indicative thing in the wood line. It has been pointed out that the site does actually access the corner, which is at the bottom left is actually where I would expect the footpath to start. There's no need to carry it on all the way, so you can avoid the issue of the pillbox by terminating earlier.
Sorry, yeah, the reason I said that.
Can we just let Councillor C finish then?
Yeah, the pillbox is well to the right of where we actually need to get, where anyone would get access if they were trying to go from the site into the A30 footway, an improved A30 footway. And so I think that's a red herring.
The reason I said it was because it stems from the discussion of the development to the south and how it linked with the footpath onto the A30 going to the west. Then I did actually mention it at the time that the developer showed in their option that's been dismissed, where it's taking the highway land, it comes in that southwestern corner. So if the developer of the southern site were to connect into that, that wouldn't be a problem. But my understanding of what members were saying, they wanted the footpath to go right out to the junction. If it does go out to the junction, but if it doesn't, then no, you don't need to. Then you haven't got the issue with the connectivity for the land to the south.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we've really gone through this with a fine tooth comb. I'm going to go back to the ward members. I'm going to let them decide which one of them is going to come in first.
Well, as I said earlier, our determination last time was the agreement of the unanimous of this committee that the housing, etc., in an outline form is acceptable, but not unless a footway is produced along the A30 on the north side. Now, I have heard nothing at all to persuade me that is not and was the right decision at that time, and I still think that is the case. Now, no one here wants to lose the opportunity of 230 whatever new housing in Port Chard. We accept that, but unless, in my view, we defer this again, because I am not convinced that the full weight of negotiation has taken place between the developer and the landowner. And we know, as Chard members, we know that there is a willingness to sell the land. So why wasn't that side of it appear before us today, before we've gone through all this discussion? So it comes down to, Chairman, we either defer this again for proper negotiations to take place on producing this footpath, or, quite frankly, I would, if we can't defer it, I would say we would have to not approve the whole application, which would be not a good outcome in my mind, Chair. So that's where I stand.
So can I just check, Councillor, did you make a proposal then?
Yeah, I propose, Chairman, that we defer again this application with the same recommendations as we have on the papers before us, and that is what I would propose. Yes, deferment.
Yeah, I'm going to go to your fellow ward member, Councillor Kent, and then I'll come across to Councillor Theme.
Yeah, I know somebody else probably wanted to second it, so I'm happy to not second it for that only reason. But the only thing I'll say is I can honestly vote to not have a footpath up there, because I'm not going to be responsible for those kids.
Councillor C.
Chairman, I'm just wondering about the legal positions. It seems that the committee is fairly settled on it needs a foot access along the A30, albeit from this side rather than through this side, if you see what I mean, to deal with the pillbox issue. And that seems to be, from my reading, the settled position of the committee. So surely we need to actually have the same additional conditional amendments as we did last time to allow officers to continue working on that access, on the basis that if we refuse, we're we're being inconsistent with our previous position, despite the fact that we feel the same about it, and we've now done a lot more homework, and we still feel that way, and it still hinges on the same reservations as we had previously. So surely we should suggest that that it would be passing subject to a delegated chairman. Surely it would be the same same decision as last time. Confirming our original decision still stands. That it needs to be subject to some form of agreement. I'll say it's section 106 that delivers a footway, or alternatively that it has a Grampian condition that it cannot proceed until a footway has been secured along the to the site along the north the A30, because otherwise it would have insufficient safe and inclusive access by pedestrian means, considering the level of the site and the extension of the site outside of the original local plan allocation.
Okay, so I've got a proposal on the table and a question, and I'm just being asked to just give everyone a second. Please don't leave the room this time, just so we can just look at the legal appointment. No, mine's. Somebody gives quite fast.
It's the first of them. Yeah, we didn't do it.
I didn't say what happened. Was it from those?
Martin, Jenny, please point.
When, 11 one here, we go. Good day, if you want. Sorry. I mean, I didn't want to be the check. That's reason.
Yeah. I think it seems to be something. And see if I could. That yes. Yes, you can have saved. Don't you know? Yeah, in fact, that's how, yeah.
They build the state, definitely live in there, we work out where. Then they.
Plan.
You got a flat.
Okay, so, thank you very much. I'm going to bring Troy in and then I'm going to go back to Martin, Councillor Wales for, final.
Thank you, Chair. So hearing, your suggestion in relation to the adoption of the Grampian condition in relation to the footpath, that would be lawful. For the committee to adopt that, we would just point out that it would need to also be, essentially looking at all of the other relevant conditions that were agreed last time, including the amendment to condition 13 in relation to archaeology. Yeah.
Councillor Wales.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, after discussion, I will withdraw my suggestion that we defer this and that I would now like to propose that we approve this application with a Grampian condition that the footpath is built and put in place along Crookham Road before the occupation of any of the houses. I think would the words that affect be proper?
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Seaver.
I'd like to second that. I'd like to second that.
Okay, I'm gonna go bring Troy back in when I come back to you.
Sorry, just to be clear, we are also incorporating the amendment to condition 13 and all other conditions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just to be clear, what about the condition that was recommended in terms of the two-way connections and keeping that one as well? So this is an additional condition in addition to the Johnson convention.
Yeah.
Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, I just wanted to address the fact that originally we were talking about the footpath going all the way to the junction, whereas now we've just had a discussion that it doesn't need to go all the way to the junction. I just wanted to make sure that was taken into the Grampian.
So councillor Wales, if you could just repeat your proposal, it's been seconded by councillor Seaver, I'll just check it. Martin.
Yeah, what it was that we approved the application in an outline form as before us, but with a condition, a Grampian condition, that the no house is occupied on the site before the footway is linked from Oaklands Avenue or past Oaklands Avenue to the new junction being put in for the vehicle traffic. I'm sure that's a long way round, but that's.
And also including the
continuous link from Oaklands Avenue to the new vehicle junction, which will be put in.
Along the A30, and also including the conditions already discussed.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah.
We seem to have gone to using the terminology Oaklands Avenue all of a sudden, which is a long road that runs along one side of the site.
Junction of Oaklands Avenue, sorry.
I think, the A30, just the A30.
Yeah, sorry, from the junction, along the A30, from the junction of Oaklands Avenue to the new access being constructed. Yeah.
Okay, are you happy with to second that, Councillor Steve?
I think we're now agreed that we're talking about the junction between the A30 and the Kirklands Avenue.
Yeah,
would be
yeah.
One end of the, pedestrian, link, and yes, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, are you both happy that myself as chair and the planning team finesse the words and if need be on that, what we've got exactly what you're after there. So it's been duly proposed, can I have a show of hands for all of those in favour? That is Tim. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. All of that I've lost me a bit of paper, so we now move on to agenda item 7, which is planning appeals. These are in your agenda pack for noting. Thank you very much for your attendance today, and I will see you next month. Thank you very much.